apologize. We're 15 minutes behind. It cuts into our time, so we'll go ahead and get this started. Okay. What do you want to do?
You want me to go ahead and go? Or
yes, sir.
All right. Well, good afternoon. My name is Earl Lewis, Deputy Secretary of the Maryland Department of Transportation. Thank you for inviting us to provide an overview of our draft 6-year CTP, which covers fiscal years 2020 to 2025. Ian Beam, a regional planner for our department, has copies of the CTP document for everyone. So if you need it, just put your hand up and he'll bring you one over. I'd also like to introduce the MDOT team with me today. First, we've got to my right, Greg Slater of MDOT SHA. We also have from MVA, Administrator Chrissy Nizer. Also, just to backtrack, you're a DE who I know you deal with a lot in this district. Kenny Fender is also here today. Thank you, Kenny. From the Maryland Transportation Authority, we have Executive Director Jim Ports. I know you all are very glad that he's here with us today.
We are.
All the way from the other side of the world.
As long as he's not here to fight for mass transit, I'm good.
and talk
he was an ally before. I don't know where he is now. He switched.
and regarding mass transit, representing MDOT MTA is Travis Johnston, Director of the Office of Local Transit Support. Thanks, Travis. Somebody's got to do it. And there's a lot of people that depend on transit, so I'm glad you're here. Also from the Maryland Aviation Administration, we have Ashish Solanki, Director of the Office of Regional Aviation Assistance. And again, as I stated earlier, we've got Ian Beam and the Government Affairs Director, Jeff Tosi, should be joining us shortly. We have a host of other of our professionals here throughout the MDOT family to answer any questions that may come up during the question and answer session. All right, these folks lead teams that win awards across every phase of the transportation industry. Together, our units have earned nearly 300 awards since 2015 and more than 50 already this year. They range from design and engineering awards to accolades for safety, security, and excellence in customer service. I'm proud of our team and proud of what these awards mean. We are working to advance our mission to meet the transportation needs of Marylanders and connect them to life's opportunities, which is a major part of our mission statement. We had a great meeting with Queen Anne County's officials over the summer at the Maryland Association of Counties Conference in Ocean City, and we appreciate your continued partnership. The critical $27 million rehabilitation project on the westbound span of the Bay Bridge is critical for all of Maryland, and we know it greatly impacts the citizens of Queen Anne's County. This is a project that must be done to ensure the safe and reliable use of the Bay Bridge for decades to come. However, we're aware that it's disruptive and impacts day-to-day life in your community. I personally want to thank officials in Queen Anne's for the feedback you've given us. We've appreciated your help and your candor as we've worked to move this project forward. We know we must communicate with one another so that our expectations are realistic and well-informed. Yes, sir?
I like the word candor, sir.
Candor. Candor is an important word, and you got to talk straight to get to problems that you need to solve. So that's appreciated. In just a minute, MDTA Executive Director Jim Ports, who I just introduced, will discuss the project and the plans we have to help address traffic volumes, work zone flow, and safety. We'll also discuss another topic I know is on your mind, the Bay Crossing Study and the public hearings underway regarding the alternatives being retained for study in the Tier 1 NEPA process. First, though, I'd like to offer an overview of the CTP, which represents our mission to create and maintain a balanced transportation network that allows Maryland residents and businesses to thrive. Thanks to the support of Governor Hogan, that's exactly what we're doing. For the CTP covering fiscal years 2020 to 2025, the Hogan administration will invest $15.3 billion in Maryland's transportation network. In addition to this funding, the Maryland Transportation Authority is investing $3.1 billion in our toll roads and bridges. This CTP is $1.1 billion less than last year's final 6-year CTP. The reduction is due to declining revenue projections, increasing operating transit costs for MTA and WMATA, and delivering a record construction program in record time, resulting in completed projects being removed from the CTP. The good news for you is that Governor Hogan signed bipartisan legislation last year that increases the funding formula for highway user revenues going to the local jurisdictions from 9.6% to 13.5% through fiscal year 2024. After years of fighting to increase the formula and adding additional grants instead, the Hogan administration is now providing a predictable revenue stream that you can rely on to fund your local transportation projects. This year, Queen Anne's County will receive more than $1.47 million in HUR funding, an increase of $121,000 over last year's allocation. MDOT's overall revenues are not increasing as much as we previously estimated. MTA revenues and gas revenues are down due to fewer people using transit and gas stations selling fewer gallons at lower prices than projected. It's worth noting that while the amount of gallons of gasoline sold has gone down, the annual vehicle miles traveled has gone up. As more people choose cleaner, more efficient cars, this is a trend we expect to continue. Since FY 2015, annual vehicle miles traveled increased by nearly 3.5 billion, up to 60.8 billion in total. Another factor reducing our available capital funding is the rising operating costs for MTA and WMATA. While 8.5% of commuters use transit, 42% of our 6-year budget goes to transit, and that number is rising each year. The state will provide WMATA $805 million in operating and capital funds in fiscal year 2020. This 6-year CTP includes $4.9 billion in WMATA funding. In fiscal year 2022, Maryland's annual investment in WMATA will be larger than its investment in the State Highway Administration. Despite these challenges, MDOT is making the most of every dollar and is delivering once-in-a-generation projects on an accelerated timeline. In 2015, the Hogan administration outlined a program of historic infrastructure investment. Over the past 4 years, MDOT has completed 1,069 projects worth nearly $5.9 billion. We're continuing this investment today. We have 718 projects totaling $7.2 billion underway, from the mountains of western Maryland to the farmlands here on the Eastern Shore. We're also adding smart traffic signals to move traffic more efficiently on congested corridors in southern Maryland and to our northern border. While our major projects garner most of the attention, system preservation work is equally important. MDOT SHA has reached a major milestone, treating more than half of all lane miles on SHA-maintained roads, a total of 10,943 miles. Governor Hogan has also made record investments in transit, and we're happy to support your local options and connect residents to jobs, recreation, health services, and other opportunities. We learned recently of good news on a project with major regional implications: approval of $125 million in federal funding for the Howard Street Tunnel. When complete, the project will allow us to double stack containers from the Port of Baltimore. That's a huge deal because it will help us ease truck traffic while boosting our economy and generating jobs. Speaking of the port, we're setting records, and we're the #1 port in America for automobiles and roll-off machinery like farm equipment and construction equipment. We're coming off our best year ever for general cargo at the state-owned marine terminals, 11 million tons in fiscal year 2019. In July, Governor Hogan announced that the Maryland Transportation Authority's toll modernization proposal will save Marylanders more than $28 million over 5 years. This would be the third round of toll relief during the Hogan administration, resulting in up to $344 million in savings. The public hearing and comment process is underway through October 3rd, and the MDTA board is expected to vote on a recommendation on November 21st. I also want to note that in October, the Key Bridge in Baltimore and the Hayden Bridge on the Hartford-Cecil County line will go cashless, with motorists paying tolls via Easy Pass or video tolling. Our priority across all of MDOT is exemplary customer service. One place where that service is critical is BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport, an economic engine for all of Maryland. BWI continues to be recognized by industry and consumer groups for excellent service and passenger amenities. A year ago, Condé Nast Traveler magazine ranked BWI Marshall the 10th best airport in the United States. In 2018, 27.1 million passengers came through BWI, a new record. BWI remains the busiest airport in the region and produces an overall economic impact of $9.3 billion while creating and supporting 106,000 jobs. If you are planning to travel to BWI for business or pleasure, I encourage you to check your Real ID status. Real ID is a federal law passed in 2005 after the tragic 9/11 terrorist attacks. Our MDOT Motor Vehicle Administration, including our branch here in this area, is doing a fantastic job of getting Marylanders' Real ID ready. In fact, Maryland was recently the first state in the nation to become recertified by the Department of Homeland Security for Real ID compliance. Administrator Nizer will talk more about Real ID in a few minutes. I should note that customer satisfaction ratings at MDOT MVA for staff professionalism, friendliness, and helpfulness remains over 98%. We are expanding on that theme with Customer Connect, a system that will change the way MDOT MVA does business. Customer Connect will allow us to deliver more services online and complete transactions more efficiently and accurately. We'll launch in May 2020 with certain vehicle services and business licenses. MDOT is also committed to a multimodal approach to transportation. That includes commuter choice, which promotes alternatives to driving alone to work, public transportation, ride sharing, biking, walking, teleworking, and flexible work schedules. Through the Maryland Commuter Tax Credit, businesses can qualify for a tax credit of up to $100 per employee, and the Guaranteed Ride Home program can make sure commuters have free emergency rides when needed. Evidence shows that employers who offer commuter benefits and flexibility attract and retain top talent. You can go to commuterchoicemaryland.com if you want more information on any of these programs. Thanks again for hosting us today. We appreciate the guidance and support that Queen Anne County has provided over the years, and I look forward to working with you now and in the future. Now, I'll ask representatives of MDOT's business units to update you on projects that benefit or impact Queen Anne's County, starting with Jim Ports of the MDTA. Take it away, Jim.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
They usually save me towards the end, but for some reason they bumped me up today. So
I don't know what that's
Because
all
we're all
about.
so happy to see you.
I'm happy to be here. As Deputy Secretary Lewis mentioned, and as you all know very well, we have a $27 million deck rehabilitation on Westbound Bridge. This project involves replacing the deck surface. We call it an overlay. It's not a replacement, obviously. The westbound span right lane, which is closed 24/7 from October through April, with additional continuous closures Monday through Friday in May when traffic volumes are at their lowest. Work also includes making deck repairs, sealing the bridge deck, and replacing existing lane signal gantries and steel rail posts. The project is necessary to preserve this critical connection between Maryland's shores. We understand the concerns about the impact of this project on mobility for your citizens and the need to provide emergency services access. With that in mind, the work schedule was established to reduce the impact on surrounding counties as much as possible. And, let's talk a little bit about what happened last weekend and how we're moving forward. We absolutely expected delays Friday based on previous summer weekend travel, but particularly good weather this Friday and several incidences that occurred contributed to the large eastbound backup at the Bay Bridge. And John, how many incidents were there?
There were 7.
7 on the eastbound, 7 incidences on the eastbound span. Some of those were crashes, some of those were debris removals, right?
3 debris removals, 2 crashes, and the rest of the safety.
And so you can imagine with the rubbernecking, I mean, if there's a flat tire, there's rubbernecking, right? But with the crashes, it gets worse. With debris removal, it's obvious much worse because you're impacted significantly. So with the 2 eastbound lanes available, it was much more challenging than usual to recover from the incidences and backups. However, after Friday, MDTA said that moving forward during Bay Bridge construction, we would consider holding traffic westbound for short periods to allow 3 lanes of eastbound travel when backups extend to I-97. We understand, though, that holding westbound traffic would be a further disruption to Kent Island residents, so we continue to explore other options. Our first solution to keep traffic flowing will be implementing cashless tolling at the Bay Bridge from noon to 10 p.m. Thursdays and Fridays. Until further notice, all tolls will be collected electronically with no cash accepted. So basically, we're going to an AET mode, if you will, of operation. Obviously, we can't remove the toll booths. That would be impossible to do at such short notice, and obviously it wasn't in the plans. But we do appreciate your letter of support. For that, I believe, Todd, you talked to the state delegation also on that, and we look forward to getting that letter also, and we're also going to talk to Anne Arundel County on the same day. We will consistently monitor backups on Thursdays and Fridays under severe backup, and weather permitting, MDTA will implement 2-way operations on the westbound span so that traffic can move in both directions at reduced speeds, providing 3 lanes eastbound and 1 westbound. That's a big change, and what we had talked about before with the reduced size lanes to 11 feet. The key is this. During the 2-way operation, speed will be restricted to 25 to 35 miles per hour on each side, and MDTA police will travel the westbound span for enforcement and to help slow vehicles down. Obviously, as we mentioned before, with the 11-foot lanes, two-way traffic at 55 miles an hour is probably not a good thing, especially with a lot of distracted driving, construction, people being distracted. So we believe that this is a helpful solution if we're able to reduce the speed limits to a much slower speed, keep traffic moving instead of holding westbound up, keep traffic moving in both directions. We believe we can do this safely if drivers cooperate. The public can help by staying alert, keeping speeds down, and maintaining a safe distance. Even under normal operations, commercial trucks are not permitted to travel eastbound on the westbound span during two-way operations. So during this two-way operation, due to narrow lanes, commercial trucks will not be allowed to cross the westbound either. Obviously, again, with the 11-foot lanes, we believe it's just a...
You mean in either direction? East or west?
In either direction.
Okay.
So you know that when we do contraflow, anyway, with the larger lanes, we don't allow it, right? We've had those conversations before.
Correct, but I'm talking about what's about the trucks heading down,
That's
heading
correct.
west.
So with the reduced lanes, trucks being very wide, mirrors being wider, we don't need any crashes because an incident can make things 10 times worse. So we're going to restrict it similar to what we do when we restrict it for wind speed.
So how far back up 301 is that message going to be sent?
So we'll be sending that message out to all the truckers the same way we do for wind speed.
Okay.
We're going to, the same process, everything. And of course, they all talk to each other too, though.
I mean, I guess one of my concerns, and I actually have as a point, so we could probably address it while we're right here, is that, you know, and I think I mentioned at the electronic tolling, is that if we had some kind of signage, and I was talking to Jim earlier, he made a good point, we'd have to work with Delaware to do it, but if we could somehow advertise that the delays at the bridge are bad, and to try and encourage the trucks to stay on 95, either north or south, they're stopping and starting is horrible, and I think when they get to the bridge and you try to pull them over, it's going to be tough.
That is another reason we're doing it, is because their starting and stopping, as you just mentioned, is much slower, and it just queues everything up because they're not able to get those trucks moving at a quicker speed like vehicles do.
So they'll be pulled off on the shoulders there at 50 or wherever? Is that going to be the plan, or?
Well, the plan is to notify them early enough so they don't even get there. Okay, as we see things queuing up, the plan is to do it just like we do for wind speed, notify them way ahead of time so they do not use that route and they pick other routes to go.
How is that done now? When you notify them about wind speed, how do you broadcast that out to them?
Let me get Don, or I know we contact the trucking organizations. That's a big part of it.
Yeah, basically, it would be put out in, on the alerts to notify the truckers as well as advertise within the permit. And the sign.
You do overhead signage?
Variable message signs, yeah, those kinds of things too.
Why don't we, Jim, I don't know how much further you have to go with your statement.
Plenty.
Okay, well, let's let him
Okay.
finish, and then we'll circle back to questions.
Yeah, I appreciate
Yes.
that, thanks, Jim. MDTA Police will enforce these restrictions. MDTA is continuing to work with both Anne Arundel and Queen Anne's counties on emergency management plans for each side of the bridge. We appreciate your cooperation with that in the August timeframe. MDOT-SHA will dispatch chart vehicles to address incidents on Route 50 and parallel routes, and will work with Maryland State Police and local law enforcement to keep traffic moving. Just to be clear, as we've been communicating throughout the summer, major delays are unavoidable as we complete this safety project. Still have 100% of the traffic. We're taking 20% of our regular lanes, 33% of our eastbound lanes. There's going to be some delays. There's no question. We were very frank about that when we came here about, 6 weeks ago now. Understanding the impact this project has on our your communities, we're working with the contractor to explore other options that could reduce the time and overall project will take. But it comes with a price. Options that could help us cut the redecking to one season include working through Thanksgiving, which we know will result in traffic congestion that will impact holiday travel, Black Friday, and shopping. We would expect delays could extend back to Queenstown outlets for westbound traffic and to Annapolis Mall for eastbound traffic. Obviously, we need your support to do something like that in support of the delegation as well as Anne Arundel County. And extending work through the end of April, instead of ending at April 16th, we would have to extend to the end of April, which is 2 weeks later than we originally planned and would impact, obviously, spring break and the race. We'll continue to look into this option, but it'll be critical to have your input and your support on this approach. It could help us cut the project from 2 years to 1, but it does involve some hardships. And to be clear, weather is a factor. You know, we get severe weather constantly. You know, it could change this. It could change this scheduling. As you know, the Bay Bridge Crossing Study team has identified the preliminary corridor alternatives retained for analysis as part of the Tier 1 NEPA study, and has launched a series of public meetings. 3 corridors, as well as a no-build alternative, will face additional study as part of the Tier 1 NEPA process. We appreciate Queen Anne's County hosting one of the public meetings for a study last week, and we have more scheduled, and of course, more information is available at baycrossingstudy.com. In other areas, MDTA is excited to begin delivering our 3rd generation tolling system. We call it 3G, which will revolutionize the way we serve our customers. The new system will upgrade the toll collection hardware and software with the latest technology and completely modernize how the MDTA does customer service. As you heard, the MDTA board voted to seek public comment and hold hearings on toll modernization proposal that puts this new system to work for Marylanders and saves our customers more than $28 million over 5 years. The proposal includes lower toll rates, new payment option, and new discount for customers starting 2020. First, the toll rates would be reduced 50% for motorcycles and would be cut 25% and 17% respectively for light vehicles towing 1 and light vehicles towing 2 axle trailers, those used for watercraft or landscaping equipment. We've been asked for decades to do something like this. We're finally getting it done. Second, a new way to pay called pay by plate will benefit infrequent toll customers as well as those who don't have a prepaid Easy Pass balance. And the third, a new 15% discount for video tolling customers who pay the toll before the invoices are mailed. A final report will be submitted October 31st for review by the MDTA board and will be posted online for additional public comment. The board is scheduled to vote on a final recommendation in its November 21st meeting. Maryland currently has 2 all-electric toll facilities, the I-95 express toll lanes in Baltimore and the Intercounty Connector in DC region. This month, we're going to be doubling that number. On October 16th, we're bringing all-electric tolling to the Thomas Hayden Memorial Bridge in Northeast Maryland, with all tolls collected via Easy Pass or video tolling, and the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. They'll both go cashless, or that one will go cashless on October 30th, so they'll both be cashless by that date. Cashless tolling results in rate savings for customers, less congestion, better fuel efficiency, and reduced vehicle emissions. It also improves driver safety and results in a safer work environment for our employees. It's also another reason to join Easy Pass Maryland. With Easy Pass, drivers pay the lowest price for any toll, saves time, it's good for the environment, and signing up is easy. From fiscal years 2018 to 2019, the number of Easy Pass accounts in Queen Anne's County increased by 5%, and FY19 transactions at the Bay Bridge increased 1.6% to more than 13.66 million total transactions. We and our partners are always thinking about safety and preparedness, and in August we organized a tabletop preparedness exercise with many local players, including MDTA Police, Operations, Engineering, Construction, and Communications teams, Maryland State Police, MDOT State Highway Administration, MDOT Office of Homeland Security, Queen Anne's County Sheriff's Office, Office of Emergency Services, Queen Anne's County Schools, Transportation Team, Anne Arundel County Fire and Police Departments, Kent Island Volunteer Fire Department, and county administrators and elected officials. This exercise helped validate plans and procedures, rehearse concepts and assets, the systems and processes needed to guide emergency response and recovery. Also in August, MDTA met twice with County Administrator Moan, Commissioner Moran, and Public Facilities Planner Cahoon about the project. And with that, I'll turn things over to SHA Administrator Greg Slater.
Thanks, Jim, and thank you all for having us here today. I'll be brief in my remarks and talking about some of the projects that we have, roads and bridge projects that we have in the county. But first, before I get into that, I want to touch on one issue that we're trying to tackle statewide. The fact that we have more than 500 people lose their lives on our system every year, and 25% of them are pedestrians. And those are people that are walking around towns just like Centerville here. There are people that are getting out of their car to change a tire, those types of things. So we're really trying to tackle this a little bit differently, recognizing that we have to think differently to tackle this problem because every community is somewhat unique. So to tackle that, we are releasing a draft of what we have is a context-driven mobility and accessibility for all. This is a land use-driven document that's helping us have an appropriate set of engineering tools for each one of the land use contexts. So we are open to any comment or thoughts that you may have on that as we go through that process. Under the Hogan administration, we are making tremendous progress in Queen Anne's County, starting right here with a $5.3 million project to replace 2 small bridges in Centerville. It is on schedule for completion by the end of this year. Traffic has been on the new gravel run bridge since June. This was primarily a deck replacement and comparatively easier than the old Mill Stream Bridge, which is a total bridge replacement on the south end. The occasional weekend closure detours needed for each bridges have been working well throughout the duration, and the town of Centerville has been a great partner with us in communicating those planned closures and impacts. So we thank them for that. Following completion of the town's water sewer project and our bridge replacements, MDOT will then go in and resurface Maryland 213 through Centerville. We're expected to advertise this full contract later this year with paving starting early in the spring. So we'll get that under contract as we get into the cold weather so that we get a contractor can start really early in the spring and get that done. Prior to resurfacing, we're going to replace the southbound Maryland 213 drainage pipe at Lawyers Row, try and help with some of the drainage issues in town. In Graysonville, completion of the nearly 1.25 mile cross-county connector trail extension is expected by the end of the year. That's a $2.8 million transportation alternatives project. Funding and certainly a lot of funding going into that great project. And if I remember correctly, that's been done in phases, and we've great to see that project. We provided contract administration and oversight of a total $3.4 million project. Near Queen Anne, MDOT replaced 5 pipes under the culverts carrying branches of Norwich Creek under Maryland 309 this summer. It's a $900,000 project to help reduce some of the localized flooding along a busy commuter route. In North County, we are resurfacing 5 miles of southbound 301 from the Kent County line down to Maryland 290. This is a $1.8 million project, will be completed later this fall. MDOT is continuing to work with our state, local, county partners here in Queen Anne's County to deliver additional bike and pedestrian projects using our transportation alternatives, our recreational trails program, and our bikeways program. Currently, we are partnering on 8 projects totaling $4.8 million in federal grants and 1 project totaling $400,000 in state grants. This includes projects such as the Cross County Connector Trail through Graysonville and a variety of safe routes to school projects throughout the county. So I thank you for having us here, and at this point, I'll turn it over to Administrator Nizer.
Great, thank you, Greg. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. As the Deputy Secretary recognized, today is the 1-year deadline to the federal Real ID law going into effect. At that point, individuals will not be able to board a commercial airline or enter a federal building unless they have a compliant Real ID. What that means is they have a driver's license ID card with a star in the right-hand corner, and they also have provided us documentation that we scanned into our system to prove age and identity, Social Security, and 2 forms of residency. So we're really working hard to try to make sure all Maryland residents are aware of this requirement. We don't want any surprises of somebody going on a trip next year and not having the proper documentation. We have created a lot of tools for individuals to be able to make the experience as simple as possible. Created appointments, so if you have to go to any one of our 24 branch office, make an appointment, we'll guarantee to see you within 15 minutes. As of Today, more than 297,000 customers have been seen with an appointment just since January, so it's really been very popular with our customers. We were proud to announce yesterday that we've reached the 2.3 million marker for individuals in Maryland who've gotten a Real ID, so just over 50%, making great progress. Federal government announced today that nationwide that number is about 27%, so Maryland's doing much better than the rest of the country. Here in Queen Anne's County, you have about 46.5% of your residents who are Real ID ready at this point. We're also adding some additional hours to make it as convenient as possible. You know, our traditional hours might not be as helpful, so in the springtime we added some Tuesday and Saturday hours. We just announced again yesterday that we'll be extending hours at 9 of our branch offices throughout the state, so that'll give one Saturday some additional time. We'll stay open until 4:30 at those 9 branch offices. We also have extended our hours permanently on Thursday to 6:30. Again, that's an attempt to try to get people who have, you know, work during those normal business hours and really need to come in to see us. So Thursday evening is a great time to come. It'll make it very convenient for your residents. We are getting out in the community and really trying to speak directly to folks about the requirement. So we've been at the Kent Island Senior Center, Graysonville Senior Center, and Suttersville Senior Center to help answer questions. I would just encourage you, if you're aware of community events, we love to be out and about talking to people directly. I find that's the most effective way to get the information out. Please contact me directly and we'll make sure we get somebody out there to talk to you. In addition to our customer service requirement, as Greg talked about, you know, really safety is our focus at MDOT. And we are constantly striving to bring that number down in terms of fatalities. Last year, unfortunately, 513 people were killed on our roadways. And obviously, we all agree that's just an unacceptable number. We do appreciate partnerships that we've had with you. Kent Island High School was recognized for the highest overall seatbelt rate from our Making It Click program. That's a great program where it's a peer-led program to stress the importance of seatbelt use. You know, sometimes folks don't listen to us, but they'll listen to their peers, and if we can establish good driving behavior at a younger age, then hopefully they'll keep that and maybe even convince their parents they need to buckle up as well. So that was a very successful program. In 2018, there were 5 crashes, which was a big improvement from the prior year, where I think the number was 14. But we know those are not just numbers, those are family members and friends, and so we take each one of those very seriously. We did provide $8,500 in highway safety grant funding for the Sheriff's Office, so it'll help with some overtime and enforcement efforts. We are pleased to be working on the county and developing a local strategic highway safety plan. I know you've had some initial conversations about that. We stand ready to provide any information, data, resources that would be helpful with the Maryland Highway Safety Office. We truly believe it's about a partnership at the federal, state, and local level, and so whatever we can do to help you move forward, we are here to do that. We're also looking at how you can apply safety from a technology standpoint. Excuse me. At this summer's MACO conference, the governor deployed a new technology called DADS. It has the ability to detect if you have alcohol in your breath. You don't no longer have to breathe into a device. You can just breathe normally, and it'll detect if the driver has alcohol in their system above 0.08. It wouldn't allow the car to start. I've been asked the question, if the passenger is impaired, it does not prevent the vehicle from starting. It has the ability actually to detect whether it's the driver or the passenger. And the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimates we could save 60% of impaired driving crashes if we had that technology in every vehicle. So Maryland's the first state in the nation that has put that in our fleet vehicles to help test the technology, and we truly believe it will help save lives going forward. As the Deputy Secretary mentioned, in May we're rolling out our new IT modernization project called Customer Connect. It's going to really change the way we do business. We've put an enhanced focus on customer service, but this really takes it to the next level. You'll be able to do more transactions online, especially related to vehicle things, as well as our businesses. They've had a challenge in terms of doing a lot of online transactions. That will no longer be the case under Customer Connect. So a lot of things will be open to them from an online perspective and making it more convenient. The thing I am most proud of, though, is our employees. That 98% customer satisfaction rating is pretty impressive. I put that up against most private industry. And we do an electronic survey after every transaction, so every customer is asked those questions. And for 98% of the public to agree on something, that our agents are friendly and helpful, I think that's just remarkable, and they continue to do a great job. So with that, I'll stop and be happy to answer any questions at the end. I'm going to turn it over to Travis to talk about MTA.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for having us here today. I also want to thank Maynard Nash and the County Ride staff for their continued partnership with the state, as well as congratulating them on their recent deployment of new routing and dispatch software. They kicked that off this morning, and from what I've heard, things are going pretty well. They used funding that we provided last year from our statewide transit innovation grant. So we're really happy to see that they aggressively pursued that and again kicked it off today. Things are looking pretty good. MDOT-MTA makes a significant investment in transit in Queen Anne's County by providing 2 commuter bus routes. We also are providing $646,000 in operating and capital grants to support the county ride transit operation. So for an FY20, that includes the replacement of 2 small cutaway buses and ongoing preventative maintenance. MDOT-MTA continues to make investments in our technology that will enhance our riders' transit experience. Most recently, we've deployed Charm Pass, which is our mobile ticketing app. It essentially provides riders with a reliable and efficient way to pay for commuter bus from their smartphone. To date, we've had more than 1 million people sign up and start using Charm Pass. In addition to that, we are continuing our partnership with Transit App, which provides real-time bus arrival information to our riders. Real-time information for commuter bus routes was added to Transit App in June, and since its launch, we've had over 200,000 users download the app, so we're really happy to see that working. And with that, I will pass it over to Ashish with the Aviation Administration.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, delegation. Pleasure to be with you. It's my pleasure to brief you on our Maryland Aviation Administration. As you may know, MAA offers excellent service and travel convenience for customers at BWI Marshall as well as Martin State Airports. In addition, MDOT-MAA is responsible for fostering aviation throughout the state in support of our 35 public use airports. MDOT-MAA regulates these regional airports and administers the statewide aviation grant program that provides funding for improvement projects, includes runways, taxiways, apron types of projects. For fiscal year 2020, MDOT-MAA will provide $2.4 million in state support to these public use airports. Some of these will come to Queen Anne's County for Bay Bridge Airport in form of $6,000 in support of the environmental assessment that will lead towards more improvements at this airport in the future. Now, BWI Marshall, a major gateway for Maryland and the entire National Capital Region, as Deputy Secretary mentioned. We have tremendous growth at the airport. In partnership with our airlines, we've signed a new 7-year use and lease agreement, and that lease agreement allows our airline partners to ensure the airport remains positioned to serve travelers with excellent service and modern facilities. An example of that, it will allow the 15 signatory airlines to collect over $1.2 billion in revenues and nearly $800 million in capital projects to which the airport will not pay. It's the airlines that will provide the funding. We are moving rapidly forward on an aggressive improvement program that will include adding services and amenities to our customers, again, while growing the business and adding air service opportunities for the airlines. A year ago this time, we briefed you on a new 6-gate addition to our international concourse, and currently construction is underway for a 55,000 square foot extension to Concourse A, which is served by Southwest Airlines. This important project, which is expected to be completed in summer of 2020, includes new food and retail concessions, and for many folks, cleaner, newer restrooms. The work is an important first step in a multi-year upgrade to Terminal AB, which is the center of operations for Southwest. This Concourse AB connector and handling system, baggage handling system will transform this portion of the airport and create a better travel experience. The improvements include, for the public, concourse-to-concourse connectivity, improved concessions, and improved hold rooms for the passengers. And lastly, modern restrooms. Air cargo operations at BWI Marshall have grown 80% as well in the past 5 years, and continued growth is expected in the future. BWI Marshall is working to support the construction of major maintenance facility for the airport's largest airline, Southwest. This will be the airline's first major facility in the Northeast, and the airport is supporting the overall construction of this activity with about $50 million in infrastructure improvements to include utility and site preparation. Widely recognized as the easy come, easy go airport for the Mid-Atlantic, BWI Marshall remains committed to excellent customer service and access and affordable airfares. Now it's my pleasure to turn it back to Deputy Secretary Lewis.
Thank you, Ashish. Thanks again for having us here today. I'd like to close by noting while MDOT has many priorities, safety remains the number one priority. That's evident not only in the hashtag we present online, hashtag MDOT safety, but through campaigns that stress work zone safety, speed enforcement, and ways to end impaired and distracted driving. I'd like to commend MDOT MVA's Highway Safety Office. Along with partners like you, the Highway Safety Office is making strides to educate drivers on the importance of safe behaviors on our roadways. At our Highway Safety Summit in April, we announced an 8.5% decrease in roadway fatalities in Maryland compared to the previous year. That's encouraging, but our work is far from over. As Administrator Christy Nizer mentioned, we had 513 fatalities. The first fatality is unacceptable. We have to strive to greatly reduce the number of fatalities on our roadways. Our commitment to safety includes bicyclists and pedestrians. Earlier in this briefing, we discussed trail projects and grants associated with those. Last spring, MDOT SHA introduced a pedestrian safety program that began with installation of traffic calming measures and speed limit reductions in some business districts in Prince George's and Montgomery counties. We'll do more of these in the coming years. Finally, I'd like to urge everyone to sign our driver safety pledge. I have an example of it right here. It's available online. Take some home with you so your family and friends who need to be thinking about safety all the time when they get behind the wheel have something that physical that commits them to it. Again, one life lost is too many. Now, I know we've taken quite a bit of time today, but we still have, I think, over half an hour for questions from District 36 as well as the county commissioners and the public. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for the time and the effort to come down and brief us on all the different departments. Like we've done in the years past, we're going to start with our delegation, and we'll start with our Senator Hershey. If you have any questions or comments, or
Yeah, sure do. Thank you very much.
For me.
hopefully he saves time for me.
And Jim, I do have to say, I'm very appreciative that you are here. On Sunday, we had heard something that you might not be here, and for those that don't know, Jim landed at Dulles Airport at 6 a.m. this morning after a week-long trip that you were with the governor in Australia. And I know it was an effort for you to be here, but I do want to say
24 hours of flying.
I appreciate that. So, one of the couple things that I just want to go over a couple things that have been mentioned to us through conversations and social media. First of all, can you explain the difference on this $27 million redecking or overlay project as opposed to the projects that sounded similar that occurred in the past, the redecking and the replacing of the span? And
so redecking is a whole different process.
Okay.
So redecking is
and that's why I said there's confusion amongst the
Yeah.
community on what's going on,
Yeah.
and they want to know why it has to be done.
Now, I'm
the way it
glad you
does.
asked that, because redecking is a much more intensive process. So for the eastbound side, for example, that's about 5 inches of concrete. They would take the whole slab out, put new slabs in, okay? This is an overlay project. There's about 7 inches of concrete on the westbound side. So what we do is we mill off the first 2 inches, which is like a latex modified concrete. I like to kind of say it's like an epoxy, if you will. I mean, I'm trying to draw an analogy for you, but so they leave the 5 inches of concrete there. It's got the rebarb in there. So they take it down to rebarb when they mill it up. And then they put the latex modified concrete on top of it, and it adheres to that concrete. It also seals that surface from further damage. So back in 2005, I believe it was, 4 or 5, 2004 and 5, you may recall they did a similar process on lanes 2 and 3. Well, 1, 2, and 3 technically, but lanes 2 and 3, because it did not adhere correctly, it started peeling up, and we had to redo those decks.
I guess real quick, before you get into too much detail, the question more involves, why have we not seen this complete closing down of a lane in order to do this project where in other projects we haven't? That's the question on why are we having to shut down a lane continuously from September 30th until the 1st of April.
With this process of milling up the 2 inches instead of doing a full deck replacement, as I mentioned, you get down to rebarb. This latex modified concrete takes 5 days to cure. Okay. So you can't, first of all, you can't let people drive on rebarb. It'd be terribly dangerous. Secondly, it takes 5 days to cure.
Okay, I think that's the answer.
So, yeah.
Just because, again, we've heard a number of people that want to know why it has to be done, if that's the answer.
Sure.
Each morning, you guys, overnight, we have contraflow on the eastbound span, right? And then each morning, that changes over. So we take the contraflow over, have all 2 lanes coming eastbound, we switch that over. Is there an exact time that takes place every morning?
Let me ask Rich. Rich, he's our contraflow expert. I know better than to talk about his business.
Richard, come on up here and take a seat.
He knows much better about contraflow.
Yeah.
Let me have him
No, he's
answer.
that one right there.
I was saying each evening when you shut down the entire westbound span, you have contraflow on the eastbound bridge.
Yes, sir.
Might start at 10 o'clock at night or something along those lines. And then you close down that contraflow in the morning. Is there a specific time every single morning that event occurs?
When the westbound bridge is open every morning is what he's
Right.
asking.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because the westbound bridge has to close for a certain period of time while you make that switch over. So that's the complaint, that there are many cars that have already thought that, hey, I'll leave early to avoid, because while we're addressing some of the issues that happen on Thursday and Friday, there's also a daily commuting problem of those going westbound each morning. And some of them have tried to get there early in the morning and beat this, only to be stopped in traffic until this occurs.
Absolutely. To answer your question, yeah, there is a time as to when that eastbound has to be reopened in its regular configuration and westbound has to be in its regular configuration. And is whether it's 5, 6, or 7, based on days and closings, that's the time we have to be open back into the regular configuration by. So there's a time, but it either happens at that time or prior to that time.
So there's no way to, so again, if we're trying to communicate back with our community, there's no way to tell them that, hey, at every morning at 5:30, we're going to have to shut down to do contraflow. You're saying it could be all different times in the morning?
No. There's a set time as to when we will be open to the regular configuration.
Right.
So that set time that is out for that open of the regular configuration will be met every morning.
What is the same?
So tell him what the
time is.
So the set time is on weekends it could be 7 and or 5 on the weekdays.
Okay, so 5 o'clock, Monday through Friday, the westbound span will be open. Right, okay.
Okay.
7 on the weekends.
Right.
Okay.
And 7 on weekends.
There's another concern, again, because of the backups that we're seeing going westbound in the morning. Could you leave contraflow open longer rather than what you just told me? Could contraflow stay open and you have 3 lanes going westbound longer in the morning? Or have you done volume analysis and determined that would be?
We've done volume analysis, and those times that we have, the 5s and 7, are based in order to get back into the regular configuration as to not to impact traffic.
Not to impact,
so that we don't create, the longer we stay in that closure, the longer we impact what could be potentially a backup or a.
No, I think the question he's asking is, if you leave the contraflow open on the eastbound bridge and open the westbound bridge, we'll have 3 lanes moving west for the rush hour in the morning. Correct?
right.
You saying can that stay open longer?
Can it stay open longer? Yes, it can stay open longer. But based on traffic analysis, there's a risk in regards to the traffic and the impact and safety.
Yeah, please.
So the specific question that you're asking is really, Will Pines, acting chief engineer for MBTA. You're asking, can we keep 3 lanes westbound? And the answer is no. With the right lane closed, in order to accomplish that configuration that you're asking about, we cannot do that with the right lane closed because you have to have a lane shift of the center in the right lane over to the right in order to get the eastbound bridge onto the westbound side. So it's not feasible to do this.
No, I think, sorry, overnight we have contraflow going on the eastbound bridge, right?
Correct.
So you're saying that you couldn't keep that going and open the 2 westbound lanes at the same time?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. One of the things that have been mentioned, and there have been a number of rumors that have gone on about trying to find a safer, more efficient way to switch over to contraflow. And they've talked about gates or something similar that we see on I-95 South in Virginia, where we have those commuter lanes. Have we looked at that, or why have we not, or when could we look at a way to make it safer and more efficient to switch to contraflow?
We currently have a project which includes the automated lane closures, which will be coming up after this westbound overlay as part of this
project.
Part of this project. So at the end of this, we will see that as well too.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we were going to talk about that 6 weeks ago, and I guess due to the questions back and forth, we missed that portion.
Right.
But Will, could you just give a real quick thumbnail on that?
Sure. So that contract's already advertised. It is a separate contract from the overlay contract. However, it's going to be ongoing concurrently with the overlay project. So we've received bids on that. We've awarded the project. And what will occur first is the automated lane closure system will be constructed on the eastern shore side only, and we'll have a system of gates, new lane use controls, and in-pavement lighting that will guide motorists through the existing crossovers. There will be support of traffic drag. So Senator Hershey, when you noted before, when we do contraflow, you kind of have that all-stop condition.
Correct.
That develops to get all the cones and everything moved. You'll still have a traffic drag needed to kind of deploy some of the equipment, but this will rapidly accelerate and limit that type of all-stop condition that you're referring to.
Do we have a video?
We do have a video. I don't have that with me.
No, of course not. Why not? You don't have it in your pocket?
Don't take that with you.
We can share that video with you that explains that better and shows you visually exactly how that process works. We'll be glad to slide it to you.
And then final question just on this, and then maybe later I'd like to add on to you, or you add on to me about, I'd like to talk about Bragg as well too.
You're yielding your time, but you're not, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Reserving my time. Just finally, and I appreciate your new operation guidelines that you've come up with based on what we saw on Thursday and Friday. Just quickly explain again how the cashless tolling will work. Are you going to reduce the number of lanes that you'll be able to go through? I mean, are you still going to spread out into 12 and then spread down into 2, or?
No. So the way that cashless is going to work, anybody with an easy pass will go through just like.
I want to make sure this is not free tolling,
This-
right? Because
no,
that
it
happened
is-
on Friday, and
no.
I want to get everybody excited that.
No, this is much different.
Right.
So anybody with an easy pass will go through and they'll get charged regular, just like they always do, their commuter rate or whatever rate they have, whatever their plan is. Those who don't have Easy Pass and would pay with cash normally, if they went through a video toll, will be charged the cash rate plus 50%, so $6.
Okay.
However, what we're able to do with this is, and we fix it kind of on the back end, if you will, they'll go through, they'll get a video toll. We will mail them the bill, but we will take off the 50% charge. So they will only be charged the cash rate.
Does that billing occur every incident, every 30 days? How does that?
Thursdays.
I mean, how often do they get that? If they go
How will
through
it be
Thursday
billed?
and Friday, do they get 2 bills? Do they get 1 bill?
Oh, John.
They would get a bill for each transaction.
Each transaction.
Each time you go through the toll plaza, they will receive a notice in the mail.
So the point is,
Get an easy pass. Get an easy pass. I was just going to say, I was going to give you the opportunity to say, get an easy
You can
pass.
say it again, Steve.
And get on the commuter rate as well, too.
Oh,
I mean, if you're going
absolutely.
through
If
that,
you're
there
going
is.
through every day.
But just go, the final thing on this one.
Easy pass.
Did you say you are going to keep all the lanes open during the cash?
No, not all of them.
So how does that work?
No,
You have the plan?
I do. Lanes 1 through 6 will be open during the cashless
Give it
period.
to Steve.
Okay.
Yeah, give it to Senator Hershey.
Will
Give
be
the whole
open during
delegation over
cashless
there.
period. Senator, I'm John O'Neill, I'm the Chief Operating Officer.
Thank you. Okay.
If you take a look,
Here's a
Yeah, we have, let him
this
get
way,
one.
that there's 6 lanes will be open during the cashless period.
Going to the furthest right.
Correct, so furthest left. So
To the left.
You have it upside down.
Yeah, this way.
Well, you gave it to me.
I know I did. It was a test. That's a
I
line.
didn't have my glasses on. No, it's
So,
not like I'm.
if you see, this is lane
Oh, yeah,
1
yeah,
that you would usually use for contraflow.
There's that
So you have six lanes that will be open. We're gonna do maintenance of traffic back here to guide everyone to those lanes and keep trucks heading westbound in these 2 lanes over here, so we can keep them eastbound, because they're restricted from being in contraflow, as you know now, traveling across the bridge and the contraflow operations. So we'll be down to that only from noon to 10, Thursdays and Fridays.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you, Jim.
One for the
Who else?
administrator.
Senator or Delegate Aaron's.
First of all, I do appreciate you coming up with another solution. This morning, I spent maybe 3.5 hours on the phone about what's going on here. I like this, except that anybody that's traveled across that bridge during it, even with tolls being taken, it bottlenecks. It's blocked. I can ride through there in my express lane, I'm still blocked. I hope it alleviates something, I just don't know where it's at. My biggest thing I want to talk about is communication, and what I see is a real lack of it during this entire process. The people in Queen Anne's County, when you talk to them, are pretty reasonable. They understand things break and we need to fix it, and that's kind of what I go through. I spent this morning on the phone talking to people, and they just want to be talked to. And I've said this last year, I said it to you all at this meeting, I said it at our delegation meeting. I've asked for you all to come over and have a meeting and let people express their concerns. Let them talk, let them yell, let them scream, let them know all the right things you've done. And I have been completely stonewalled. I've called, I've talked a number of times to several people, and I just think it isn't going to fix anything other than it's going to give somebody an opportunity to say, hey, I just want to be heard, because we are suffering. We have parents who are going across this bridge in 4 hours of travel, and they got to get their kids to and from daycare. So they're concerned about it, they're worried about it, and there's a big fear out there. And sometimes you just talk, and you just let them talk. It helps a little bit. You aren't going to fix anything necessarily, but somebody might have a good idea. And I would hope that you would consider this year sitting down with the people of Queen Anne's County who are adversely affected with this. Maybe do the same on the other side. You can see the mayor over there is a little bit upset with y'all about tolling and stuff. I don't know if he's going to fix it with that, but he's certainly upset about it. And I think I'd just like to get a commitment today that you guys will actually come over here and participate with the people and let them have a forum to vet.
Well, first of all, we were here 6 weeks ago, and we had the Bay Bridge crossing study, which we were here last week.
Next week.
Next week, I'm sorry, next week. And so we do have lots of opportunities for people to express their opinions. And I tell you, we get opinions all the time, whether it's emails, Facebook, I mean, you name it, elected officials. We're more than happy to talk, but it really has to be productive, quite frankly, at the end of the day.
It will be.
A screaming match is not productive, Talking to transportation officials and others is productive. We do want to be productive. So that's kind of where we are. And again, we meet at Mako. We meet a lot.
Jim, with all
but we
due
can't be
respect,
everywhere
it's not
either.
we, it's us
Yeah.
meeting my county. You know, these are the people that elect us all. They get us voted. They get us voted. And even in the Kent County meeting, it was not an interactive meeting. People could walk up to talk to somebody, but I could tell you the people at that meeting were very disappointed that they didn't actually get a good presentation from somebody where they could actually exchange and communicate. They go one-on-one at different stations, but they want to talk. They want to hear from you.
So so those public outreaches that we do, as you call them, the one-on-ones, we found them to be extremely helpful and successful. And one of the reasons that they are so successful is because people get to come up and share their specific concerns on a specific issue with a specific person. And they don't have to wait in a line to be 327th one to talk in an open forum meeting. You know, when we have those open forum meetings, the first thing we do is we allow the elected officials to talk first. They get 5 minutes. And we hear complaints about that. Why are the elected officials talking first and then they leave? And then, like I said, people will come up one after another, and that person who's 60th in line gets frustrated that their question isn't being answered. Whereas when we have these public meetings, the one-on-ones as you call them, they get to walk up and speak to someone directly about their specific concern and have it answered. And that's why we do it that way. It's actually beneficial to the customer.
I
know
really,
we see it differently, but
we do see it differently. And my point is that 90%.
But that's why we do it.
But 90% of the people have no clue of all the good things and all the hard work the state's actually gone through.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to find out about what you just did today on Facebook, probably the way I find out. I found out on Instagram how we were going to do the backing up to 97. That's how they find out, and they have questions.
Well, Steve, okay, let's address that, because, you know, when these things occur and when we have instances, you heard we had 7 instances on the eastbound span. We're not planning those. That stuff happens. We're not asking for a crash. We don't know when a crash is going to come. We don't plan those crashes. We don't plan the debris on the highway. So it's a little more difficult when you're trying to react to all that different stuff and address the traffic at the same time, while you have, during crashes, emergency management equipment coming through. It's a little different operationally than being able to plan something out and then to be able to communicate it. It's a completely different, operationally it's very different. I know guys that are in operations understand how difficult that is sometimes to get that word out right away.
Okay. All right, so delegates, would you like to?
I would like to, but I think we're running out of time, and you really need to.
I can ask them the question in Kent County because I think I'll go a little less time.
I'll
We're going to be there. We're taking
Steve
notes
Wilson
for
had
all
a
the comments.
question he wants to ask for.
Yes, sir. It's nice to see you. I want to particularly remark on Ash's good work with the airport over the last, not year, but years. He's a remarkable and good man for us.
Yes.
Number of things. I think that the communication we have seems a little limited at times. We have a number of things that probably would help us, one of which is we used to have something that amounted to a hotline during the last paving job that went direct to our 911. That currently, Scott Haas, you could tell me, is down. Speak. The hotline we had with the Bridge Authority.
We don't have a hotline.
But we should. So, yeah.
Well, we talked about that 6 weeks ago. So when we talked about that 6 weeks ago, we have the hotline, I guess you would call it, the baseband information. And what we suggested at that time is when we had the meeting on the 29th, August 29th, that you all tell us how you want that communication to run, because I think I mentioned at that time I worked at Hartford County for a while, and when they get information, they disseminate it to everybody who has an account on that hotline with the county.
Sure.
And my understanding was you had a similar system. And if you have a similar system, we're more than happy to work with you on getting you that information. But we need that contact. We need that.
Yep.
But we said that 6 weeks ago. Okay? And we'll say it again, we're more than happy to work with you on that. But I need information from you all
Yep.
to understand where to send it.
We'll make that happen.
And Todd not talk all the time.
That's
We
fine.
will.
We'll make that tomorrow.
Yeah, another matter was, from my point of view, when we heard the other day that the guidelines operationally had been changed on the west side, the west side, certainly raises for us the question, is there any trigger point on the east side, sort of in reciprocity, if we got to the Kent Island Narrows Bridge, that you see what I mean, in equity? What's your thought about that one?
So again,
Yeah.
when you're doing operational mitigation, you're trying to look for any solution you can get.
Sure.
And at that time, it was thought that one of the best solutions would be to hold the westbound traffic. We've heard that from Jim Moran on different occasions about holding it in different places, but about the westbound traffic. And so the first thought process was to possibly hold the traffic up on westbound, let the eastbound clear. But that comes with a price too, because it takes time, as we mentioned a couple minutes ago, to set that up. And also then you queue up the westbound side. As we talked, Steve, you'll enjoy this, 3:30 in the morning, my time, a.m., 1 o'clock their time here, I was on a conference call, like I said, at 3 a.m., and what we decided to do was, we previously stated that we couldn't do contraflow because of the 11-foot lanes. We said that 6 weeks ago, right? And at highway speeds, I think we're right. That's the right decision. We believe that if we reduce that speed between 25 and 35 miles per hour, we could do contraflow safely, and instead of holding westbound traffic, allow at least one lane to go through. So we've changed that operational thought process, if you will, to do it differently. But operations, as I mentioned, is not easy because it is very reactionary sometimes, because you don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know what's going to happen. We will have to look at how we reduce that speed based on weather. If winds pop up, we have to lower the speed. If it's a nice clear day, maybe we can get up to 35 miles per hour, but we don't want to go much higher than that because we have safety first. And quite frankly, if people would stop texting, all the other distractions, it would be helpful.
No, I appreciate the answer. It does, to some extent, alleviate it, but in the end, we wind up with this kind of communication lags where we just hear today that there's a 25-mile, and so you kind of come in with that mindset.
Sure.
Anyway,
well,
Jim?
We're not set on that. We're just trying to find answers.
Okay, my turn.
The
We
one I
might go over just by a couple minutes, but I think I'm going to ask you more technical questions.
We got you for a couple minutes.
I'm glad you got your engineer with you. When was the last time the westbound bridge deck was replaced? Full replacement.
So, as Jim mentioned, the deck has been done in a number of phases. So the suspension span and through truss span, I actually had a graphic.
I know those have been replaced, but the rest of them had the topping replaced 14 years ago. When was the entire deck replaced? I mean, my point is, if concrete has a life cycle of 25 years for a bridge, where's the life cycle for the westbound bridge?
I apologize, I don't have that number with me today.
Would you say
specifically, because the phasing of the deck work has been accomplished over many years in different segments. The bridge, as all of us know, has different what we call subunits. You got girder spans, the suspension span, through truss. So those rehabilitations have occurred many different points in time.
Well,
we've never done the whole bridge in one shot.
Well, I understand that, but I can't recall in the last 19 years where you've gone full depth through, with the exception of the two passages that were the entire thickness of you said it's 7 inches. So if we're taking down to the top 2 inches and putting on the latex modified, I totally understand that. I'd like to know how old the concrete is below it, because,
My recollection from memory, so forgive me if this isn't quite right. The bridge was built in the 70s. There were spans, limited spans that were replaced in the 90s, primarily in the concrete girder spans. Then in the 2000s, we did the overlays that were subsequently
no
replaced.
problem. I make that point because the eastbound bridge, we know it's out of its life cycle.
Yep.
We know it's out of its life cycle. We know that redecking is going to start as soon as this is done.
Correct.
So if that one's over 25 years old, we're spending a lot of money doing a lot of work on something that the concrete below it might be well over 25 years old, so that's a concern. On September 20th, we had 56,000 cars from 12:01 a.m. on a Friday to 12:01 a.m. on a Saturday. 56,000 cars went through with contraflow, no incidents. On the 27th, we had 49,000 cars go through. Same thing, we had the incidents, but the backup went all the way to 97. So the concern is here, and I looked at our averages from our counters that we have, the average is 49,000 cars on a Friday in the month of October. So you're going to have that same amount of volume. So hopefully some of this contraflow, hopefully some of this will alleviate that and it will be safe. So I commend that. But the question I have is, when do you start that contraflow? Because we have a lot of traffic that runs up to about 6 p.m. and we've had this discussion in the past where if it was raining, opening contraflow after 6 p.m. because the volumes go down. Is there any triggers? What's the trigger to open a contraflow? Or are you telling us come Friday afternoon it's going to be open and ready like it normally is when there is no barricades?
So when we came 6 weeks ago, like Jim said, we had communicated that contraflow would only be utilized in the most extreme of cases because of the safety concerns that we discussed. So the specific trigger for contraflow would really be dependent on the circumstances. The weather, for example. If we're in a heavy downpour, it might not be appropriate to do contraflow at all. Right?
What I'm trying to drag out here is if you say, look at perfect weather and it backs up to red hot and blue, at least the public knows that there's hope. I've always talked about you got to give the public hope. So if you tell us what the triggers are, at least people know, okay, well, we're not at the trigger, or, you know, thank God I'm in this backup, I know they're going to open up contraflow.
And I think the reason that I'm reluctant to give a specific number is because, you know, we, like Jim mentioned earlier, we do have a contractor that's out there working. We do need to try to get this project done. The sooner we get done, the sooner we get out of your hair. So going into contraflow does limit work operations on the westbound bridge, as we discussed at the last meeting. So at the end of the day, if you're at red hot and blue and there's no incidents and we're seeing that traffic is falling, right, that we're in a period where it's declining, that may make no sense at all to go into contraflow. In contrast, if you're at red hot and blue, there's 3 new incidents and the volumes and the traffic's coming in, that could be a good trigger. So the fair way of saying this, we're going to monitor all the conditions on the ground.
But I appreciate that, and that's what I'm trying to see. So the public understands right now that come Thursday night and Friday night, contraflow will not be open at 4 o'clock. Unless, of course, there's some kind of accident. I'm getting to that point to say that, look, don't expect it to be open. We're going to open this under extreme situations. It's not going to be an every day, every weekend event so that people can bank on that. So I just want that public, because talking, you know, what was said here tonight, I'm sure everybody was assuming, oh, thank goodness, Thursday nights and Friday nights, contraflow, but that's not the case. And that, I don't have a problem with that. I understand what that is. So and our concern on the Eastern Shore was, you know, especially Queen Anne's County not having a hospital, closing down the westbound bridge was just not going to work for us. I mean, you know, that just, it would have been, that would have impeded too many things, from emergency services to anybody going westbound, because, you know, if you close that bridge, you're looking at least 40 minutes by the time you clear it one direction, open the traffic up the other direction, clear it the other direction before you open it again. So, you know, I knew that was a hard one to take care of. You know, one of the other things is, you know, we're coming up on Dover this weekend. So everybody's going to be heading to Delaware. And come Sunday night, we're going to be dealing with those traffic backups. And I do believe, and I'd like to sit down and have the opportunity to talk with you and look, that we can do contraflow on the eastbound bridge. I think that there is a way to configure the cones to get 3 lanes through there. And I'd like to have the opportunity, and I'm not going to do it here, and that's one of the things I think, you know, I'd like to see that kind of communication. And I know that, look, it's your bridge, it's your ball. We're asking nicely, can we sit there and at least talk about it? and, just in a focus group. It's not Queen Anne's County telling you, we want this, we want that. It's just more like, I think the more that we understand, just like I'd like to see a tour of the commissioners and our delegation of the construction that's going on out there. Let's take a look and let's see what's going on with all the different projects.
So two things. We'd be more than happy to do that tour, and we'd be more than happy to listen to your suggestions. So that's easy.
Yeah, and I know where your office is, so I don't mind driving up there and just sitting in your office talking to you.
You would have to come to us all the time.
Well, that's okay.
We don't mind coming down here either.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that's all. That's just a suggestion on that. The last thing I want to get to is the new bridge, the replacement bridge, which everyone keeps calling it a third crossing. I don't know how many people I've talked to, but in 1973 that bridge opened. And we know how many roads were in the state of Maryland, how many of them were leading to the Bay Bridge. And now we get to today, and those numbers have almost tripled in lanes. And, in 73, 1 million cars back and forth. In 2018, 27 million. And yet we're still in the same structure.
And why is that?
Because of political will.
Because of zoning and expansion and reach the beach.
Correct.
And so let's talk about that just a second.
Okay.
So the bridge didn't cause the problem.
Not at all.
The bridge was a way to get from east to west.
Right.
What has caused this problem is decades of expansion through rezoning in Anne Arundel, rezoning in Queen Anne's, rezoning in Talbot, all these other counties, especially the Ocean City and Reach the Beach. And that's been going on for decades. So all this stuff has been going on for decades, not under our control, because it's economic development. We don't do zoning.
Correct.
State doesn't do zoning.
Right.
Governor Hogan doesn't do zoning. But we're asked to fix those decades worth of problems that have been occurring. So you're right. It was 1 million several years ago. Now it's 27 million.
That's right.
That's not the bridge's fault.
I'm not saying it's the
That's
bridge's
what
fault.
we're asked. But that's what we're asked to do. We're asked to fix that problem with a bridge that's been decades of other things occurring.
Well, that's how it is everywhere when
I
it comes
agree.
to transportation.
I agree.
I mean, how many in 1973? How many lanes were on the Washington and Baltimore beltways?
I'm not disagreeing.
And I agree with what you're saying, and I understand that, and I'm not placing blame. I'm saying we are long past moving forward with another crossing, if they want to call it that. To me, it's a replacement bridge. All the arteries leave here. The governor agrees. I agree. This is where the bridge needs to go. How do we speed the process up? We know that this NEPA study is going to be in 2021, which I feel the governor could say right now, here's where the crossing's going to go.
And he cannot do that. The NEPA, you know this, Jim, I don't have to tell you this. The NEPA process is a federal process.
Correct.
That we have to abide by, especially if we want federal funds. It's not a state process, it's not our process, it's a federal process.
Okay. So with that being said, it's going to take an additional 2 years for the NEPA Phase 1. Okay? Certain people in here know that President Trump came out with an executive order that those NEPAs should take no longer than 2 years. So maybe we scrap this NEPA, we start over, and we get a result in 2 years, and we move forward with the second portion of the NEPA. So that's all I'm saying. We know this bridge needs to happen. The minute contraflow was brought onto these crossings is the day they should have started planning for another bridge. And that's no fault of yours or anybody in this room. That's just the way it is. So now this is the hand we are dealt. And it will start to be an economic impact on the entire Eastern Shore, and especially on Queen Anne's County. So, unfortunately, you have to hear us sit here and beg and get twisted about this, but this is something that's not going to go away. And before I forget, I'm wholeheartedly in favor of you working through Thanksgiving and working and getting this done in 1 year. Because that, to me, is hope. That's light at the end of the tunnel.
I
think this commission is in
Definitely.
favor of that. We can take a vote right now.
So I want that, but, again, I want to put that out there that, I think that this process can move faster. And, if it takes us going out to, for instance, to cover the majority of the counties on the Eastern Shore with their approval of it going here, I think that Kent County would agree with that, wouldn't he, Dudley?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
what I need, so seriously, what I need, if you don't mind, I need a letter of support, right? Because, again, we're not trying to hide anything.
Understand.
The reason that we took Thanksgiving out of the mix to begin with was because of your outlets,
Right.
as well as Anne Arundel Mall, Arundel Mills. And so, we're gonna need letters of support, from the delegation as well as you guys,
Okay.
to say, yes, we support you doing away with Thanksgiving and plowing through this process with your contractor. There are a few other things we need to clarify, because the latex modified concrete, they want us to do a rapid set. We're not aware that that's ever been used on an expansion, or a suspension bridge. They're gonna have to guarantee that that's gonna work and not pop up as soon as we put it down. Those are engineering things we gotta feel comfortable with. They do wanna go to the end of April, not stop in April. That is gonna impact Easter. That is gonna impact spring break. That is gonna impact the run that you guys have. So these are things that, and we'll lay out the criteria that the contractor is asking for to try and get it done in 1 year. We agree. We think that's a good solution, but we need your support, because when Thanksgiving rolls around and those backups come a long way and people start screaming, Governor Hogan, you said we're open for business, but we can't get to the businesses. There's going to be pain. And I just want to make sure we're all clear on that, because
1 year of pain's better than 2 years of pain.
I agree.
Yeah.
I totally
So,
agree with you,
and-
Jim. I totally agree. But I don't want to get darts and arrows thrown at me later saying, we didn't say to do that, because that's what happens politically. Look across the water on the other side of the bridge, and we're seeing that, right? So
Absolutely.
I need support from that council and that county executive and that delegation also.
Right. So,
So if you can help us, you guys can help us, you guys can help us, we'd appreciate it. And look, this thing happened Friday. We had that meeting with the contractor.
This morning.
This morning. I'm losing track of my days, he isn't. But this morning is when that meeting occurred, so that we could look for any possible option to minimize the impact. Not totally minimize the pain, because there's going to be different pain points, right? But minimize the impact for 2 years. Again, weather dependent.
And
So if we have
understand
a
that.
lot of severe weather,
I'm a
all bets
contractor.
are off.
I'm a
You're a
concrete
contractor, you
contractor,
know
so
what I'm
yes.
talking about.
So, but with,
One second, if we can get this, everybody in agreement, we speed it up and it gets done in 1 year.
Yeah.
Is the plan then to start on the eastbound that following year, or is there going to be a breather in between?
No, we still have a breather, because we have,
Yeah, we're
it's a
not-
whole procurement process.
Procurement process.
We're not ready for that yet.
you're probably ready to get closer than I think you are.
You want a few minutes
I'll just
for
put that out there.
public
But be that as it may, it's got to be done anyways. So it doesn't matter if we do that
Correct.
eastbound bridge 3 years from now, when the traffic numbers keep growing, or 2 years from now. So.
You're right.
And that's the whole premise behind, we need a new bridge. And when you were here 6 weeks ago, thank you for coming, I just asked for the hope. When, in a perfect world, will the commuters be driving across a new bridge? And we couldn't even get a decade.
Well, no, because I know you mentioned President Trump had mentioned this is what he wants to do. None of that's been done through the EPA. None of it's been changed anywhere, as far as I know. So we still have to go through this process right now. So we're going through the process. We have public hearings, I believe, in May. Unfortunately, my folks
Understand.
the paper started aren't here right now.
You're on Australian time, so it's all good.
Yeah, so,
fine.
The public hearings will be in May, so, that's a process we have to go through in a NEPA process. It's mandatory, there's no way around it. So we have to go through that process. And then from there, we go to tier 2.
Yeah.
And again, if you listen to the county executive across the water there, he doesn't want anything at all. So, we're dealing with both sides of this issue. Both sides
Well,
of
if
the
he doesn't want anything at all, if you got any state highway dollars that you're spending over there, we want some things.
That's right.
We can spend them over here.
We didn't get into that conversation.
Yeah, that's true, so.
We recognize it's a challenging situation, and I know we're running out of time here. I think it was fortunate by some coincidence, the CTP meeting with Queen Anne's County was scheduled for today, so it gave us an opportunity to get face-to-face and have our whole team down here and get feedback and input, which is very valuable. And again, the governor, customer service is job one, and we work and strive to always look at our processes, improve them, analyze them, and get as much input as possible so we can do the best we can even when we have challenges.
So I just want to, if I can have the floor. I know that the bridge and the overlay reconstruction is the 800-pound gorilla in the room today and the day before the future. But there's some other some needs that we have in our county. One being an overpass at 213 and Route 50. That's always been a point of contention as far as accidents and things of that nature. And then it's no surprise that we have a new community going in at Four Seasons, and I think that there are some ways that we could work together to have exit ramps on and off 50 regarding the increase in traffic that project's going to bring, that's going to ease life on our side roads. So I guess my question to you is make sure that those other needs stay on your radar, and maybe you can give us an idea of what our opportunities are and what your plans are to address some of those issues.
Sure.
As well.
I can touch on a few of those, just because some of them have a lot of history there. The one on 213 is the location right up by the college, correct?
Correct.
And so, those are the ones that have been kind of on the books now that we've gotten 404 where we needed to be, and 301, 304, and some others. There are additional interchanges up and down 50 that would be next. We've had a lot of conversation about what's next. At this point, we don't have the revenue to put in for big construction projects right now, but we're having a lot of conversation about what's next. And I think your priority letter is pretty clear on kind of that being one of the priorities. I know we had a pretty horrific fatality down there a couple of years ago. It was a late night one. And so that's one that we're watching. The 404 50 interchange is another one kind of everybody's watching. But if you look up and down 50 and up and down 301, we did 301, 304, but there are a lot of other interchanges that were on those plans as well. So, the question is kind of what's next for the shore as we start to think about this foundation of trying to build that next shelf of projects, those types of things. I think we also have, outside of the traditional grade separated interchange type projects, we have a number of projects that we have that I think really make some real system impacts in terms of how we're running really smart signal programs and combining that with some transportation systems management and operations solutions to really move traffic when they do have an increase with something like Dover or something like a Friday.
I would just like to say, on behalf of the county, Director Slater, I'd like to thank you for closing that Route 18, that left-hand turn. I mean, you saw the picture, you recognized the hazard there.
It's Todd and I on a Sunday afternoon texting
Yeah,
pictures back.
well, he got it from me, so and I got it from somebody else. But it was a huge help. I mean, we are able to control that traffic on Route 18, really with just almost 3 deputies putting them at the crossover points. We can solve that problem and keep our emergency services going. And as far as 404 and 213, I know that those lights help Kent County.
They do.
I mean, that metering of that traffic helps us with that backup. So, I mean, it takes a long time to get those done, but right now they're serving a purpose.
Absolutely, and so what I'm trying to look at is we know very clearly, and Todd and I have talked about this, what the breaking point is in the number of vehicles that come over that Kent Island Bridge and where that starts to leak onto the other systems and where we can really look at that traffic up and down the corridor, because it's not just traffic from the college to Kent Island. It's really traffic from all the way down in Ocean City all the way up, and trying to understand how those systems are synced together and working together, adjusting as they need to on the side, as well as managing those side streets. So, we're continuing to look at that and figure out the best solution to really balance the traffic between here and down there.
And then we've, the 301 incident, with the J turns,
Sure.
and what road is it, 405? 405, there was, 4 accidents in 2 weeks. And, I don't know if it's a line of sight issue or something, maybe take some attention to that.
We've been looking at a couple of different things. There is a line of sight issue that we're going to try to think about. There's some vegetation out there that we're trying to think about, and there's another, we're looking at some options with the median, right? Yeah.
So real quick, I just wanted to add something, in terms of public awareness, I would suggest this because I know that when the initial crossing study came out and the governor supported going in the original spot, and a lot of us do for obvious reasons, because everything's there. We know those bridges are going to go away in 2065 and probably earlier because that's older estimates. But I would reach out. The public doesn't understand. They think, a lot of people live on Kent Island think you're going to drop a 6-lane bridge right there on Kent Island as it stands. And I think it's important to get the message out there that this is going to be a corridor upgrade much further than just that Bay Bridge wherever it goes. There's going to be additional lanes. There's going to probably be toll-style lanes, high speed, similar to what they have in Northern Virginia and that kind of thing. So I think even if you drew a crayon picture to show people what the concept would be, I think it'd garner a little bit more support even from people here in Queen Anne's County that would realize we would have local access back on our roads, and this would be through traffic, which it truly is, even though it affects us adversely on and off. I just think, a little bit more push on what the crossings would look like, I think really would go a long way.
So we got to be careful not to step over the NEPA line.
Correct.
Right.
That's the problem. And when the governor says, this is what I support, he's basing it on the data, but we, as an organization, have to be really careful about crossing that line. But
right, we have to be methodical.
That's why we got to get through tier
rules.
1, so then we can. Tier 2 is
But
where
it's still
you really.
a corridor
Tier 2
upgrade.
is where that occurs.
You're still doing a corridor upgrade. You're not just doing a bridge and dropping it
Just
somewhere.
like the 2014
Yeah,
study.
we have that in some
Yeah,
of
it's a
those we have
big
that in some of
thing.
those
You're just putting a bridge here and saying, here you go, Kent
Right.
Island, deal with it,
Right.
and that's
By the
not what's
way,
going to happen.
Just
so.
before we end, we have to actually compliment Todd. He's been great to work with, even through this process as we're increasing communications back and forth. We're constantly emailing and calling each other back and forth on stuff, so.
He's Engineer of the Year too, right?
No, I did not know that. I did not know that.
Engineer of the Year.
But he's not for hire. He's
That news didn't get to Australia?
Well deserved, but I can tell you got a good asset right there.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We know how good Kenny is.
Oh, hey.
We want to compliment Kenny too. By the way.
It's on to end this meeting.
Anybody else have anything else?
Thank
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming out,
Thank you.
and hope the rest of your night goes this smooth.
I can tell you something before